Good morning, and thank you for joining us this morning for our City Council work session. We'll go ahead and get started. Connie, could you please call the roll?
Yes, here.
Third,
Here.
Mangum,
Yes, here.
Here.
Marchand,
Here.
Nichols,
Here.
Black,
Here. Thank you. We'll move to agenda item number 2 is Housing Alliance and Community Partners Update. Representatives from the Housing and Alliance Community Partners, HACP, will discuss their goals and projects as well as council's policies and expectations.
I think.
Good morning, Amy.
Morning. I do have this nice little handout for you guys. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hey, thank you for having me. This is the first, I think, I've presented before the council. So basically, it's busy. We have had, I think probably more than anything that was a concern with housing is the move to work, the building that we bought for the skills and development. We had agreed that way back that we could use this and use CARES money, and we have since found out that we are okay with that. So we don't have to pay that back, which would have been a huge sum, or we'd have to sell the building. So that is now in progress. It's been remodeled. We've had meetings over there. It's turned out really well, and so hopefully we can continue on with that. We are now meeting with the alliances of United Way, all the proper, organizations to keep this going and do what we need to do for the move to work. The highlights, you can see what the housing numbers are, where we're at. We are definitely underutilized on the vouchers. We are working on that to get, because we have 758 available, which we have 525 in usage, and so we're working on to get those filled, because it's a big need for housing. We have installed a server. We have much more security than we had in the past. It was kind of scary what we had before, so that's really been a big thing for the housing as well. Yardi is the software conversion that is crucial and what HUD uses. That was a very painful process to get it going. They still have their share of hiccups with the software, but it really aligns with what HUD requires for reporting, and it's a lot better than what we had in the past. The elevator has been an issue as far as getting that fixed for Christensen Courts. We now have that secured for the funding, and it's going to happen. It's just not easy to find somebody that will work on elevators. And so that's one of the ones that, you try to get the bids out there, but there just isn't anybody that's willing to actually bid on it. So we do have one that's actually working on that. The Christensen Court Food Pantry is completed. And really the goals for next year, we're working through a lot of issues within the organization. Document imaging of files is crucial. We found like anything else, we misplace files. And so we're going to work on that actively. The website is supposed to be working on where it'll be much better access than what it is. And then enhancing the landlord relationships for the housing choice voucher. And then we'll open the HCV wait list in January. And then we do need to do a board retreat, strategic planning in the first of the year. And so basically, that's kind of it in a nutshell as far as where we're at.
Yeah, we got a couple. Well, let's start at the end. Okay. Council President Cheatham, Nichols. You're not Mangum anymore, are you? Yeah, Mansfield. Mansfield.
Changed it last week.
That's right.
Yeah.
So, a question, 233 vouchers in are not being used. Are those monthly, annually? What is the count on those?
That would be annually, and that is a program that's, we needed to work it more aggressively, and we did not. And so we now have we're now proactively working it, but yeah.
So a follow-up, is that because we have landlords who will not accept those?
Nope. There are landlords that are willing to accept it. We just haven't worked the program successfully, to keep it where we actually have those leased out.
Okay.
So it's a combination of both, but probably more so on our side.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to follow up on Rick's question. Are those the Section 8 vouchers?
Yes.
Is that what those are?
Mm-hmm.
And are those the permanent vouchers that are assigned to your structures, or the mobile ones that can go out
I think
into
these
the
are
community?
the mobile ones, a combination of both.
And it would seem like they'd be a pretty hot item, right?
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, I would just, to confirm, we didn't work it as actively as we should have. And so now we are aggressively working through it. And there's always people that need, that kind of housing. So
Right.
it's just getting the wait list and working through. A lot of, you have people on the wait list too that have dropped off because they found something else. And so it's not an easy process to go through.
Right.
But it is now it's high priority for sure.
And that would be the Section 8 vouchers where the tenant would pay 30% of their income, and then the rest would be picked up by the federal government under the voucher. Is that right?
So they should be leased up. Yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, without a doubt.
Okay, Mansfield and then Lyric.
What's the criteria for obtaining a voucher?
Boy, you're asking, I couldn't tell you that because I don't work the programs,
Okay.
yeah, as a chair.
And then the second question would be, how do landlords get paid by the vouchers?
Again,
Okay.
the stuff on the outside, but not internally how it works, but I'm sure they submit something to the housing for payment, but
Okay.
I couldn't confirm that's the exact way it happens.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I just wanted to hear a little bit more about the move to work and sort of what you see as the timeline going forward. I know there were issues, especially COVID, but
Well, there's been a lot of issues as far as back and forth, as far as when we obtained the building to remodel, to get somebody to actually do the work and then finding that's done, and then finding out that there's a possibility that we couldn't use CARES funds to pay for that, but all the work had been done. Now actively, because it is open, we're using it for meetings. Now the work is to get it back out into with United Way, those groups, and get it going, because it really does need to happen. As far as timeline, I wouldn't expect it until like after the first of the year,
okay.
but it is definitely a need, yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Rick?
thanks.
If I can go back to these vouchers, is there sufficient housing to utilize these vouchers in our area? I mean, we hear about the housing shortage. Even if you had 233 people wanting to use these vouchers, are there 233 residences they could move into?
I would say probably not. I don't know the availability, but, with the way the housing is right now, I would say probably not, but especially when they can get more money for, doing it the other direction. And it's work to be part of the landlord, part of the housing voucher program.
We'll follow up. Are these applicable beyond the city limits of Pocatello?
I think it's just within the city limits.
Just within the city
Yeah.
limits? Okay.
So I think there's nothing out in American Falls, which would be nice if there was something out there. But it's, the Housing Authority of Pocatello, so that's where it's confined to.
Yeah.
My guess, it might also go into the city of Chubbuck.
But nothing into the county?
But I would be a little surprised if it was, but I don't know for sure, but I think it's within city limits is what I think.
Yeah,
also.
I can find that out for sure, but I was thinking it was just within the city limits, so.
If you do find that out, the council might be interested in knowing
Okay.
that. It sounds like someone might have an idea of somebody that's renting outside of the city limits that might be interested, so. Brent?
So anyhow, on the vouchers, do you know if the amount of total dollars that that HUD will pay on the voucher, how close is that to fair market value? I mean, does a voucher pay under what market value might be? Is that a potential problem, or are they pretty close to paying market?
That would be one I'd have to get back with you as far as how that works. If you did fair market value, I'm not sure that would equate well. For the people that are living there, it's a great thing, but as far as for the housing, you do less because you'd have to pay more for that if it's fair market value, but
Right.
that I can find out.
All right, thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, council? Yeah, Amy, thank you so much for what you do and for the housing. It sounds like there's some questions. If you can get some of those answers, if you just wanted to email those to me and I can get them distributed, or you
I would
can.
like to say I'm the know-all on this, but I definitely am.
It's a lot to know, so thank you
there is
very
a lot
much.
to know. Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move to agenda item number 3 is Bannock Development Corporation update. Representatives from Bannock Development Corporation, BDC, will be present to give council an update on BDC's activities and achievements. Good morning, Mia Kate.
Mia Kate Kennedy, the first CEO for Bannock Development Corporation. Good to see all of you this morning. Lots has happened since the last time we met. We ended up forming a county, both city and other regulatory organizations to do a reciprocity. We are under NDA for several projects, so obviously I have my own lawyers for those NDAs that cover me personally. So if a company comes to me and asks me to sign that NDA, I can't disclose certain parts of projects, but the rest of the projects are pretty much open for dissemination. And so we did create forms for each of those, and we're in the process of distributing those. So the airport, Allen and Christie County, and both cities are a part of that. So we are not working independently on projects and sort of replicating. We've always had a reciprocity for a long time with Brent and the city of Pocatello, but we decided to extend that to the other entities because there were a lot of projects going on and we were doing replication in either the finance part or vetting them or figuring out planning for the properties. And it was kind of becoming a puzzle and we were all guessing at what we were doing. So we do have that, and that has been really nice because we're a lot more open on what everybody's working on. And so I think it's saving us time and dollars, not just us, but the cities and the county. And they've been amazing, all of the parties. So I just want to thank them personally for working on that because we take those intake forms and we actually call any clients or potential new people or any questions within 24 hours. And then we send that information back to those entities. Currently, we're on a little bit of a backlog because we've recently gotten a lot of new inquiries in manufacturing, different manufacturing businesses. So we're, believe it or not, at the end of the year, we're actually excited that we're getting calls more frequently for businesses who are wanting to either do an expansion or potentially move here. Now, granted, we might get 40 of those and 2 of them might be something that will actually work out on the property resources or what we have for utilities. There still remains a huge push throughout the state and every state to take databases which use lots of water and power. So those projects don't employ a lot of people overall. And there are some good things and bad things, but we don't typically have a ton of property to fulfill what they're actually looking for. They want, 300 or 500 acres, and then they also want a lot of power. I did spend time over the last month with the utilities. I attended my annual international conference on economic development where all the states are represented. I think this year there was only one state that wasn't represented. Don't ask me what that was, but I think it was Wyoming, but I can't remember. They're usually there. But I was able to sit with 40 site selectors on a personal basis. We were able to ask them questions and then they would reply to us where they think we are when they're looking for potential sites. They did tell us that they haven't had I found this interesting, but they have not had a logistics inquiry for 18 months or longer. And that's all of them. So it's amazing that that's kind of, there was a lot of Amazon and different things going on for a while, and now they haven't had any of those. And then we also talked strategically about what our area has to offer. We have kicked off the marketing program that is regional. So we have cities, county, lava, and a couple other entities who put into that, and we are facilitating that project. So those people will be reaching out to you. If they don't reach out to you and you do want to give input, just email me or call me or text me or send a pigeon, and I'll somehow figure out how to get you guys in touch with them. They will be here the first week of December. So they're actually flying out. It's a group that's a neutral party. The site selectors did recommend them. They're working on several other cities, Raleigh, Durham, some in Virginia, some in outside of DC, Chicago, all over the place. And so they're very knowledgeable, really helpful. That project will be done probably by the end of January. It's really not going to take too long because they've got a good team. And they'll get all those interviews collated. They'll give us ideas on what our assets are from their perspective and site selectors' perspective, as well as the industry specialists. So that's a super exciting project, and I'm really excited to see where we're at. And hopefully we can use that to work together more prominently. But that project does take up a lot of our time. It will for the next couple months. So, questions?
Let's start at the end again. Council President Cheatham and then Nichols.
Ms. Kennedy, prior to your coming to our community and working with Banning Development, we had a developer who came to town who turned out to be a straw man. So your comments about vetting, I'd like to explore a little further. What do you do to vet a potential company to come to our community and know that what they're talking about is real?
So we have a 5-question sort of process that we go through. I meet with them personally. Once I get the call, I contact them within 24 hours. We have a long meeting on the phone. So this is an example. On today's Thursday, on Monday, I got a call. Someone who already has a business plan lined out, they wanted to go somewhere and now they want to come here. So we upgraded that because that's more of an urgent project. And the first things we ask is, what's your financing? What does your business plan look like? Do you have a business plan? Who are your partners? What properties are you looking at? And what's your investment here? So that process seems pretty easy, but that process takes us probably 3 to 4 weeks to look at the background, make sure they have websites, look at their plans, look at what their building is, look at what those utilities and water, what would that mean for that business versus bringing others in? And then who are their partners, or what other businesses have they done? Oftentimes, we do find that they're a new company, maybe their website's not up to speed, they might be out of the country, and in those cases, we look at those. I also rely on my own lawyers who are in mergers and acquisitions. They have access to looking at what companies are, and they can get a rating. So we can vet them pretty easy. And if they don't want to answer the questions, I've never had that. Because I'm under NDA, I do not share that information with anyone unless they want me to share that information. So at any given time, you'd be surprised how often I hear, oh, this business, and we're working on the background to actually see if they are a legitimate company that we can take. We're only able to do so much facilitation, and I feel like we're only going to take projects that we can know are on the up and up. We will help them find financing routes if that's something they need.
If I may follow up, do you often find companies that their ask of the local community or of the state are beyond our means?
Yes, very often. One of the biggest things that you will find, and you mentioned previously, if I had been here, that company probably wouldn't have even been on the vetting, because I think in the long run, I did vet them and I realized where the problems lied. But the biggest thing is companies want to come here, especially startups or even expansions, and they don't want to put anything up front. So there's no skin in the game by them. So they will often ask me to find the financing for them, and I will exhaust every financing route, including incentives, to help them. But oftentimes it's, we want you to pay for everything, give us abatements, do this and that. And they may even be a good company, but they're not willing to put that forward. There's no skin in the game there. I like to see a company that will put 30% skin in the game right away. SBA requires that for most like lending loans, And we're going to be no different. So if you're basically just looking, I will still take you as a project, obviously, because we want all our businesses that want to come to be successful or expansions here. But oftentimes they just don't have the funding. So they're wanting us to give them the funding. And currently we do have a couple businesses that were in that. I am working with them, but I can't spend high amounts of time with them.
Brent?
Hi.
Hi.
So I understand you're under NDA and you probably can't tell us a whole lot maybe, but what can you tell us? Are you currently working with any active businesses?
Yes.
Who are interested in coming to town here? Can you
Yes.
give us just a general flavor of what they are and the magnitude?
Yeah. Typically, I'm looking for companies that are not the wide scale big data centers. So we get a lot of those RFIs and RFPs from the different agencies, and those really we don't have room to just facilitate one of those. So I'm excited to say that we are currently working on a flight school with the university. I will be on the East Coast, and then I'll be in Seattle this next week. To finalize, we will be working with the university, Martin Blair and several others, to facilitate that. That company is willing to put up stuff in that in the upfront, and so we're not waiting for someone to just pick up the tab on that. And so we're working on that. Along with that, there's other vendors and aviation interests that would go out there, but out to the airport. And we also have some manufacturing companies. The one I spoke of earlier is very interested in coming here. So we've escalated the process of helping them. So manufacturing, 50 to 100 employees, good paying jobs. We're also working with COT and the university to find to get students to take the manufacturing and the new programs, and then also to help our employers or potential businesses to know that they can get a workforce here. So we've got a lot going on, a lot of development, mostly manufacturing, some innovation. I'm working on 2 expansions. One of the expansions is a little bit more problematic, but I think we can get over that hurdle, hopefully. But the other one is moving forward, and there's a lot of interest. So,
Yes, Mayor, follow up.
Absolutely.
So I have several questions, but they're all related, so I'll ask them all at once. So what are our biggest obstacles in attracting companies here? What are our biggest draws? And what do we have for incentives that we can offer, say, when we're competing with, other communities? And then finally, what can the city council do to help you?
well, I think let's go from the last one first. I think helping out is amazing. Like I've sat with a lot of you, but if you're interested in spending time with me and meeting with me, you certainly can. But I think the council can just be aware of, like, with this marketing program, be supportive and give your opinions so that they can actually formulate data that's real. One of our biggest obstacles is we're a smaller state, right? Like as far as people. So the oversight in the state, there's not huge oversight groups, which is great. That's a great thing. But it also doesn't give us a lot of data that we need. So we're lacking in data often, even on housing. I've talked about this. And so even though that we have certain data, we're lacking a good source of data. So site selectors, for example, look at us and they're like, you need to fill your toolbox. We haven't seen a good marketing plan from you. Like, you need to market your area. Tell us what you're about. Tell us what you have to offer. What are your assets? Believe it or not, over probably 99%, I would say there was maybe 2 people who knew that we even had INL in the area. So like, these are people who are national doing all other states, and they're not even aware of how close that is to us or what we're doing. They weren't aware that we even, had a functioning airport. So getting that marketing plan and soliciting that when we are out there talking to them, we're doing a great job, right? Like, everyone's out there, but we don't have a cohesive plan that we're giving them. Once we get that out there, the marketing can go a lot more smoother, and that fills that toolbox to get people interested in what we have. We did have a manufacturing company, a really good project. It was government funded, but really high level. And they actually went to Arkansas and I apologize, I can't remember the other state. It might have been Tennessee. That's where they chose. And this was we want Idaho, Texas, and anyone, Wyoming. And in 2 months, they switched to Arkansas and Tennessee. So they're getting a lot of buildup. I can also tell you, if you look at Oklahoma City, they've done a really great job in their marketing, and they've attracted some new markets that I'm really interested in pursuing. And we can talk about that too at our next time if you want, because I will be attending some conferences for that, and it's exciting. They were able to really develop some new markets that are, good for their area. They've come a long way, and I'm really proud of them. And there are people that were representing them at the Economic Development Conference.
So as far as like the obstacles you're up against and then the positive things that we have to offer, what are?
So we have a ton of positive things to offer. Our location is superior. We I think when people think, oh, Boise's so great or this is great, I mean, that they're not great, but our location is great because we're close to things. We're close to recreation that is big. We have the highways. We're in such a prime location that's to hit. We're close to Salt Lake City, so people like that. And they also don't realize just all the activities and the things that we have. So the positives are we have great location. That's important. And now we're really looking at that and we're going, hey, look at us. We have great location. And we should be saying that out there. It's not that we're just Southeast Idaho. We're really a great location. And the recreation, we have a great workforce. The universities in this area and what they put out is amazing. So we have that. They were, most of the site selectors were really excited about that we had so many graduates that could come all the way, from north down, and our university is really helpful. So that's superior for us. Any town that has a university is going to be popping because the workforce is so demanding. So some of the negatives, housing is obviously an issue, and amenities. We need to attract that workforce age, and I've said this a few times. We need to attract that workforce age that are going to come here and they're going to work at the businesses. And so getting them, what are they going to work on? What do they want here? Because they want to live here, but what are they going to do here? And the ones that are, like FBI, what do they want here? What amenities do they want? So
What do they want?
there's a lot of sports. I'm a big sports thing. I always use Spokane. Spokane has 3 events that bring them in billions of dollars, and that's just not even exaggerating. They use 6 weekends, so 6 days to bring that in. And sports, they started Hoop Fest, for example, which wasn't a huge expense. Sorry, my watch is ringing. They started with 100. Well, first they started out with under 100 teams. They're up to 8,000 teams. You can't even get a hotel unless you're booking like years in advance. And I can tell you, when I was in Seattle and on the peninsula especially, they actually were going to bring Hoop Fest over there as well, because they have 1.6 million tourism that go right by there, 6 million that go past to the national parks, and they wanted to stop those people for some of these events. So they want events, they want things that a 25-year-old to a 35-year-old are going to attend, concerts, games, sporting events, things that soccer is huge. So we want to look at those because sports can bring us all together. And then on top of that, what are the amenities? Having hotel rooms, having something that, charter, maybe with the flight school, there's charters to the national parks. There's ways to get there. Transportation's super important.
Council member, one thing I've heard, a couple things I've heard, and Mia Kate's absolutely correct. Sports is a big thing. Activity, a nightlife, a college-filled town in the community, and the diversity that we have. For Idaho, we're pretty diverse community, but for the country, we're not very diverse. And so diversity is important for people. A nightlife is important for people. A college feel is important for people. And different activities. You have a convention center here that helps. And so there's a lot of things that go into what do we need, or what are they looking for. Good education is another big one that they're looking for. Good education. I mean, things like that. And I mean, we've got a great education source right now. We don't have a nightlife. I don't know how many times I've been with people for dinner that are looking into our community, and we go to a restaurant and they want to walk in our downtown area, and everything closes at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, and they can't. They would like to actually go and do some shopping, and they're like,
So I think if you
Where is
look
it? So-
at music, sports, culture, a downtown that's really concentrated, right? Because that's where people are going to look for that downtown. And then also, like I can't underestimate like music and arts, theater and arts. That's super popular, not only with them, but like even me, like I'm single and I want to do stuff at night that are active. And also foodies. A lot of this group are foodies.
Yeah.
They cook. They want to have those resources to find those groceries and do that. I'm a vegetarian. It's very hard to find the things that we need. They want those. And if you look at small towns, take a look at over on the peninsula, take a look at Paulsbo. They've had like a huge increase in people because they started focusing on those things, which they always had the amenities of Seattle, but they still were doing poorly. They're doing amazing. I mean, I was just over there looking at what they've created. And again, yes, community centers, taking care of your seniors, and then, having this convention center and sporting. One of the things that I would really like support on is that we attempt to have better 3Ps, public-private partnerships, because economic development thrives on those. And the reason why, in a basic nutshell, so the 3Ps is because you have buy-in not only by the business, they have skin in the game, but you also have the support of government and cities and counties in a 3P. So everyone is looking for that support. And it's number one what we look at. So they're super important. They're expensive and it's hard to get in them, and they're long-term, but we need to really get good at them, because if you look at cities who are doing really well, look at Meridian, look at Eagle, all of them, we're all parts of, even Star now, of 3Ps that are working together. So, I mean, Star is amazing, I was like, Star's even blooming. So, it's fun to see for me from an economic development standpoint how these cities really are doing.
Oh,
Linda,
were you
yeah,
gonna
go
say
ahead.
something?
I was, but go ahead, I won't.
I was just going to comment on the foodie idea and where the role that small towns are playing. I like to look at magazines, and I love travel magazines, and so I look at international, but also look at the U.S. and look at the Western region in particular, and they have these whole sections on different places to go and what you can eat and what foods are popular there. And I mean, it's very food focused. But I've noticed a shift in the way they write these articles and cover. And it used to be the big cities, and now it's all these little towns you've never heard of. And I'm thinking, we could get on that map, and be part of that if we sort of develop something that is particular to Pocatello. But the focus really is on small towns and on food and sort of the culture around food. So I think that's a good thing for us to focus on.
It's good for us to get out. These conferences are great. If anyone, this particular one is for women only, and it's very elite. You have to kind of be, I was on a waiting list my first year. But there's only 110 people invited so that you have access to everyone. It's good to hear what every state is going through and what they're doing with their small towns, but not just small towns, overall, what is that? And yes, foodies are big, that age group, it's big on that. I asked my daughter, what are the things that you like even? Our intern who's going to be our full-time employee, we asked her, she's gonna be graduating from ISU, coming right here to stay here. So we're glad we get to keep her here. And that's what we really want to do. We want to keep students here. We want them to be involved here and to work in their careers, from fifth grade, high school on, to stay here and plan to stay here. And these are all amenities, and I call them amenities, but they're also big investment development projects that we haven't really taken on, but we really should take those on, because working together, that's how we're going to make these happen. And there's money out there. I have lots of investors. We just need to have the right sort of roadmap for them.
Council President Cheatham.
When you're working at a company, and I know it takes years to move from contact to finally getting them here, and we lose one, are you able to discern where we went wrong or what we were missing or what attracted them to a different place?
Yeah, so one of the things that I've done, and I mentioned this previously, is we have a file system. We are going to get a program also. So like, for example, when I talk to that, I keep detailed notes of what we discussed and where we were at in that project. And you can clearly see in the notes, this company didn't have their financing in order. We tried to hook them up with 3 different financiers. That didn't work out. Where do we go from here? And then they decide, we're going to do something. We will make a note of that. And clearly, I would say 50% of the time, it is a financing problem, maybe higher than that. But also, it may just be that they're just shopping. So we've had several shoppers. So it's like we do want to move, but they're really just shopping with independently of site selectors and state. And so we can tell where it's gone wrong. We can tell if we don't have the utilities there. We can tell if we don't have infrastructure. Say, for example, I'm working on some things in South County, and clearly we have a water and, we have a utility problem. I mean, we don't have what they need for expanses of property out there. And that's not to say that I don't have investors that want to go out there. It's just they don't have what they need. And I am in constant contact with the county, but we definitely will. That's just one example. The cities are exactly the same way. And one of the things I would caution is that, I think a lot of people think we have so much property, but we don't have ideal property all over the place. So we have to be really creative and really hold on to the property that we have to make it work. I mean, we got to be picky, and that's a hard pill because people want jobs. But we also don't want to be 30 years down the road and go, why did we do that with the only property that was available for that?
Well, Mia Kate, how often, I know this has happened a number of times that you have somebody that's very interested and then there's a leak. One of the reasons you push your NDA so hard and so much is somebody hears something, the next thing you know, we're talking about it, and somebody throws it on Facebook, and then there's a whole bunch of mud thrown at it, and then there's, nobody does anything here and there, and then it just blows up in our face, and we're within a few weeks of getting a signed contract and moving forward. That's one of the issues too, is when there is a leak, or when somebody says something and it blows up in our face, and all that work for years has gone by, and we lose it because somebody can't wait to tell everybody else that they know something going on. So
It's difficult because our money is very limited. Like Bannock Development, we squeeze every penny, and travel is huge for us and being able to work with the clients. And I can tell you that we had a big project and worked on it for over 19 months. And I got off an airplane, and within 5 minutes, it was already unraveled. And the investors, it's a hard pill for me to swallow because I feel like I have to then try to still keep those investors for, a potential other project, or maybe that same project to revisit it. And it has blown up, and we've spent not only the resources, but we're also using our investors. And that's not an unlimited list. We're always looking for those. But these are investors who came to us and said, we want to invest. And yes, that's what will happen. And I try not to be on social media and others. I'm always positive. I try to be positive. I see so much negativity, but there's so much to be positive about. But I also feel like that's why I do have the NDAs. I don't go to the clients and say, hey, can you restrict me from saying anything to anyone? And obviously we have to meet with the utilities and this person and this person, but I have to trust those people as well to keep those confidences, because that business came to me and said, we want you, Mia Kate, to sign this. We want you. And I send it to my lawyers. This happened the other night. They wanted something right away. I sent it at like 10 o'clock Eastern time. My lawyers, thank goodness, are wonderful. They looked it over and they're like, this is fine. It doesn't preclude you from anything that's gonna be bad. And then we sent it over to the client. We started working right away, even that late at night. And that's another thing. I mean, these things don't happen on an 8 to 5 timeline. So it's months of working, and that's just one example. So I think that's where the council can help, is once we hone in on a project that is really important and something that we support, it's super helpful then if you can get behind it and also, tell people, educate them. It's an education process because people are scared about where our dollars are going. Everyone wants to know where their government dollars are going, or where any of the dollars are going, even our dollars. And I think just that transparency in supporting projects and being open about them and what we're actually working towards, because a project will start, and like I always say, we're building for the future. So it's a long-term thing. It can last a long time, but look at all the cities that are doing it.
Brent?
So are we ever in a situation where we're just sort of flat being outcompeted by, say, states that are willing to, offer property tax abatements and other resources that we don't have available? I mean, I know we have tax increment financing, but is that an issue where we have other states that are just providing more?
Yes. It's not a coincidence that Arkansas is getting a lot of business, right? Like, because look at Arkansas, look at the layout of it, look at what it's like. It's not a coincidence that Tennessee is growing exponentially. We actually, when I was in IT, my partner did all the Wi-Fi for most of downtown Tennessee, and that's been, a few years now. So we are outpaced. And we do need to take a look at the state, but we don't want, if I have a client that's only interested, like I have a current client who's I won't say too much, but like, it's all about the incentives. If the incentives is the first thing, all site selectors in our conference, the very first thing they said, even for them, is if they're only interested in, they don't talk incentives until step number 28. But we do need to take a look at those, and we do need to be good about our own. But I think I can honestly say, when I have a client and I can come to you guys or the county or someone and say, these are the things they need, I'm really particular about that, probably more hardcore than the last person or most people, maybe even my board. But I'm like, if this is something legitimate that I can see based on my experience in economic development, I will try to push for that to make that project go through. But not something that's going to injure us in any way, but something that will get that. But that's why they're going there. So we are at a little disadvantage, but also we're at an advantage in that we can be flexible, right? Like on a case-by-case basis, we can work with them and we can do our own. What would that incentive look like on city property or on county property versus private property, or on private property? I work with those owners. We do have investors who have chunks of money that are private, and we have an income tax. So if they're a CEO and they're going to make money, they are probably not going to come to Idaho, right? Like it's not going to be here. So there are some things, but I never let that stop me, because if a business really sees what we have and we're good at marketing and selling, they're going to come no matter what, because they want to come here. They're looking for places like here. So,
Thank you.
Okay, Linda and then Rick.
And I just wanted to sort of add to what you're saying and kind of follow up on your question, Brent, as far as things that we can do. I mean, Mia K can obviously work with the county and work with the state and you know, other ways to sort of come up with incentives or ways to bring companies here, but cities are very limited. And one that you mentioned, tax increment financing, and that's really one of the only mechanisms that we have as a government entity. And so we just attended a breakfast this morning with our legislators, sort of a Leg Council breakfast, reviewing the legislative session and what's coming up in this next session. And I don't think it was really talked about today, but there's been a move in the legislature for a while now to get rid of tax increment financing, and it's one of the only things we have. So to go back to one of your early questions about what the council can do, we can work with our legislators and really talk with them about the need to have that mechanism available to us.
Right.
And not have that be taken away. There have been some bad actors in the state that have sort of misused that, but Pocatello has a history of using it very, very well and doing it sort of the way you're supposed to do it and everything. And so for us to lose that would be tremendous. So we need to keep in touch with our legislators and work closely with them and really, you know, make sure that we get to keep that, because it is one of the only things that we can do.
Well, and I would stress the 3P again.
Yeah.
You can become involved in these projects, development projects, as a city and a partner. And sometimes that's bonds, right? Or eventually, you know, like even Bannock Development could eventually do its own bonding. PDA, working with the PDA. Now we're the PDA. We're talking about how they can be involved. And granted, that is the TIF and different things, but they can be involved. So really take a look at being involved as a partner, because I think Mayor Blad was right in saying that if you have that support, even as a partner, like say there's no financial incentive, but you're a partner, that makes our clients feel so much better that they're going to succeed here, that we're behind them. And I try and always involve everyone. So once we get a business and we're courting them, you know, I try to put everyone involved that's needs to be there. And the other thing is these 3Ps in these projects. One of the things we haven't talked about, but I feel like it's urgent to mention it here, is we talked about housing and Section 8 and that. But when you do enter into these 3P projects and you're invested, that helps community development too. And community development, you know, has their own funding and different things. And economic development really did not re-merge with community development until like prior to COVID again. And then once COVID came, they said, you're going to start thinking about housing, and you're going to think about this and think about that as economic development. And so we want to walk closely with our community development. And we also want to have things that raise the ships. So these projects, that helps community development as well. And that's super important, because we always talk about economic development or community development, but we really have to work together. And these partnerships that I'm talking about, that bridges that gap.
Rick?
as I have traveled around the state in my other part-time job, I've noticed that there seems to be a lot of concentration at the Department of Commerce on larger communities. Do you feel that there isn't enough emphasis? I mean, are we getting the attention in smaller communities and rural areas that we need to develop those along with the big cities in the state?
I was just on the phone with Commerce yesterday. I'm probably, I hate to say this, but I have a little bit of a reputation out here because I am outspoken about our area and economic development for our area. And so even some people who recently left Commerce are like, you just go get them because like we all know who you are and what you're doing. But I also feel like I'm going to say this, there's some work to be done there. There's some work to be done there. And I don't want to out anyone because everyone's, doing their jobs, but we definitely we're not just a smaller rural community. We're instrumental in the state. And I think if we stand up and we keep saying that, because I'm very, people probably think, oh, tiny, right? But we're not. We got to stand up and start saying, this is what we need. We definitely need that support in Commerce. And I think Commerce is working through different things. And I'm just hoping that they, like, for example, we don't get a lot of projects lately. There's not a lot of projects out there. The economy, we're kind of in a stall, but yet I'm pushing it every day. That's how I'm getting these phone calls from people who actually still want to move, right? Like, or want to come here. We have to constantly be on it. It's a 24/7 job. It's just, we have to go get them. We can't just sit here and wait for Commerce to help us. However, Commerce, it's a work in progress. There's work to be done there.
Can I make a follow-up?
Absolutely.
Across the state, many of the state departments hold regional meetings. And I go to those now, and I see nobody there. Idaho Transportation Department's holding a regional meeting here in a couple of weeks, the 30th of this month, out at their office on South 5th. And I don't see the community showing up to express the needs that we have with that department for development. There's a lot of road construction going on, and there are plans down the road, but as we've seen with our downtown underpass project, that was put off, 16 years from its initial plan of development? And I wish, if there are people out there listening, I wish they would get more involved when those departments come to our corner of the state and express the needs and concerns that we have to solve some of these problems that I'm sure you're addressing when you talk to potential developers in our area and the things that they don't see that they need to come here.
Right. Well, and you have to realize that most of our developers are not from this area.
Right.
And so they need to hear, they're asking this business person or this bank or somebody some questions, and we're all across the board. They're not getting the full potential of what we have. And so that's where I think the marketing can help. But I also agree. I want to state here too that our website is up and running. We have a form that you can fill out. You can put any suggestions, things you're worried about, things you want here, any of that on there. We'll collate all those. And then when meetings do come up, we do highlight, we'll say, you should attend this or you should go to that. I'm only one person, so I'm often traveling. I know Brent goes to the transportation, so we're in contact all the time. But I do feel like you're exactly right. We need to show up for all of these things. We need to have a presence, and everybody's stretched for time, but even our citizens and our community, all of that, if you have those things, we're willing to take your hopefully really nice emails or those forms. And if you have constructive suggestions or things that you want to focus on, we will direct you in the right place of how you can be involved too.
One more follow-up. An example of where I think we don't put our best foot forward. I had a meeting recently at a local restaurant, showed up a little early, and they couldn't find the booking. The people I was meeting with showed up, who supposedly had made a reservation, and I was told by the greeter at the desk, I'm sorry, I can't help you. It wasn't, let's get it done. It was somebody at a restaurant saying, we can't accommodate you. And there were 3 tables busy in the entire restaurant. I hope our community recognizes that that's the point of first contact, and it makes an impression on the kind of community we are. And whether you're working in a restaurant or a hotel or a bar or whatever it might be, you may be the first point of contact with a potential employer or company that wants to move into our community, and that's important stuff.
It is. What you're talking about is identity. And that's one of the things that the site selectors stressed most when they do FAM tours. And also, I did want to point out that they did offer for me to reach out to them directly to do a FAM tour, which is where they come through and they look at the area and they look at everything. And you have to be glowing during those FAM tours, right? Because if they come through and they see that, that's going to go to their whole network. And so, I'm hesitant to do one of those till we get this marketing back and we start working more together. I know the city's rebranding. There's things happening. But I definitely believe that those kind of tours in those situations are super important. And you don't know who's coming through otherwise. I've had investors come through who said the same thing. So we do need to work together, but that identity is the first thing that our site selectors and all of the consultants. So not all of them. The way economic development works is we might work in a small little job and then we might move up, right? And our goal sometimes is to make the swap to consultant. I mean, obviously you get paid more, you're working in a different scenario, or you might be a site selector. So that whole train of economic development, they all talk. That's a huge network. And so you want to have the best light forward. I do point to Oklahoma City. They're doing amazing. And there's a lot of talk about them at this last conference and some other cities, Tulsa and some other places. So I think we can get on that same train, and it is that identity that we need to start passing around, and it does need to be that identity that's just, even a tiny town like Kingston, where I was at, if you were to ask them what their identity is, they will kind of tell you we're the small community by the ferry, they even have it. So I think that identity is super important, and then a positive spin on it. I can't tell you how many times I see a new business come, and that new business is having to defend itself to all the negativity. Like, they just got here and it's like, you're going to be out of business in 2 years and this and that. And it's like, what kind of welcoming community is that? We need to be better. We just do. And it's not even just a kindness thing. It's a supportive thing. We got to support our businesses because that's how we're going to function.
One more time.
I don't believe it, but go ahead.
One more time. And I think it comes down to the appearance of our community. Whether it's our streets, our sidewalks, our weeds, our building maintenance, we need to put our best foot forward. And it isn't just Tom's street department that needs to do those things. It's every property owner in our community that needs to do something to be welcoming and to put our best foot forward. It starts when they maybe get off an airplane or pull off an exit and drive into our community. What do we look like? Are the weeds overgrown all along Clark Street as they come into town? I mean, does the sign show up on South Fifth? What does the entrance at Simplot's look like? That's what our community is based on. And when I first came to this town, September of 1977, we drove in from the airport and got off at the Simplot exit, and I just finished reading Atlas Shrugged. And I saw the flare of gas from Simplot's and FMC and thought, aha, Wyatt's torch. And that made a huge impact on me in this community. And when I finally moved here, it was November 1st, 1977, and I came through the gap right at sunset, and I could see across our community and thought, wow, what a beautiful town. But it seems like there's been, and it isn't the city's fault, it's property managers and owners and homeowners who simply are ignoring what their own piece of dirt looks like. Mm-hmm. And it's important. It's that first impression.
It is.
It is. I think businesses try hard. I can tell you that I did make a little bit of amends with the huge building that's in my backyard now. I did visit them, talk to their general manager, Logan. He's amazing. He felt so bad for me, but we did meet up. And, you know, he's like, the good thing is like, we're going to pave on the 17th, so you're going to be gone. So all these fumes, just turn off your furnace. But he goes, we're going to plant some nice, it's going to look nice. So at least if we're your backyard, it's going to look nice. So, you know, they do try. And I can honestly tell you, just on that positive side again, having lived in Seattle and even other areas, there's some beautiful areas on the ocean, right? Like, it's beautiful. But one thing I love about here, and I've always loved, is really it feels very clean to me. The sidewalks and stuff, like if you walk even in other cities, they are clean. They're not. We do have some work to do, but compared to other areas, we also should be proud because it feels clean here. It always feels clean. I don't feel unsafe in most circumstances. I mean, and so we have that. And when other people come here like I did, they see that too. So there is a cleanliness here to some degree. I get what you're saying. And I think those aesthetics are super important, especially if we had a fam tour. We would want our aesthetics to really stand out, especially arts and culture and, you know, beautifying our streets. That's all important. And it's important also to be mindful of our community and people that don't have, you know, funding or money to maybe, you know, we need to help our neighbors too. So
What is that building in your backyard?
So
I've been looking at that since it started.
is it a law firm? It is. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a law firm.
It is.
So there's going to be up in that area. It's no secret, but there's going to be several banks and a law firm. So basically, my house will be completely covered at one point. But you know, now that I've kind of made amends with them, you know, they were really actually very helpful. And so I think it's going to be, you know, it's going to be a very busy area right up there. But that is what it's going to be. And, you know, they are doing a nice job with what they're presenting. And I've got to support all development. So even though it's very hard living through it this past time, yeah, I think it's taken a few years off my health, honestly. But, you know, it's good for us. So it'll be good. It's going to look nice and they're taking good care of it. And I think the rest of it will come along too.
Okay, super. Thank you, me. Amy, you got to come to the,
No, this is just a statement.
No.
Because I'm on the.
it doesn't matter, you still got to come, you can, I shouldn't be letting you make a statement anyway, but,
This I feel good about, though.
okay.
So as being on the chair of Bannock Development as well too, I just want you all to know, I'm retired from Citizens Community Bank, but I want you to know that we made a very big investment into the downtown area with our parking lot. And it's amazing how much that costs, but it'll make it look really nice and it'll help enhance the area. So I feel like we contribute a lot,
Absolutely.
even though I'm not part of the bank anymore.
You're not there anymore. It happened before you left. It
Approved the
started.
budget for it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's
And
right.
the downtown, I mean, that core is so, it's so important. It's economic 101. I mean, that it just is. Like, we would be amiss if we were economic developers and we didn't work on downtown, because that's where everybody's going to ask to go. What is your downtown? So it's always going to be true to my heart, and I'm always going to want to work with Stephanie and everyone to really make that, you know, really great. And it is coming along. I think it's beautiful downtown. So.
Do you have another one?
Well, we brought up downtown and it brought something else to mind that Tom and I have talked
Now,
about.
Linda, see, this is what happens when I let you speak.
We've got
Moving on.
we've got a problem with those trees downtown. They're tearing up the sidewalks. We've got raised edges of sidewalks, and we had an elderly woman take a face plant in front of one of our businesses downtown reasonably because she tripped over one of those slabs that's upturned. And I think we need to look at that. The city needs to address that, and not rely on the landowners down there, the property owners, because we put those trees in.
Well, the great thing is we have a $1 million grant because of an incredible grant writer at the city of Pocatello that is specifically about trees. And
But
so,
this is sidewalk. We've
well,
got-
the trees got to do something too. And
Yeah.
so,
And we put some money to
We-
that, too.
yeah, we've put money to sidewalk. We've done some things. So there is good news and good hope there.
I can say that there is a huge push nationally to have spaces down there with like urban trees and gardens, and getting water usage is super important. So, but downtowns are investing in like little nature reserves, not just parks, but where you're shopping, where you're eating outside, where you're going. And that's attractive to the age group that's coming in to be the workforce. So
we got to stay on that. I agree. So, Linda.
I just want to say one last thing.
I bet. I've heard that before.
We have talked about a lot of the challenges that we have and areas where we can do better. And of course, we can always do better. But there are, as you mentioned, a lot of good things going on and good things happening. And I just wanted to talk real briefly about one of those things that I hear a lot about lately and have experienced myself, and that is our local theater scene. Because we do sort of struggle in the area of culture and nightlife, and that is one of our bigger challenges. But we have a lot of local theaters that are putting on, and the university, that are just putting on quality programs and plays and things, and that is really encouraging. And I've heard from people that live here, people that have recently moved here, and people that visit here, that they're very impressed with that, and that it's kind of a level that they wouldn't have expected of a city this size. So just to end on a
I think if I'll give
positive
you
note.
3 cities to look at that: Port Gamble in Washington, Colville in Washington, and then also Logan. The theater redeveloped there has been super big. So I could potentially, theater, I mentioned that before, in entertainment and the arts, super, it brings over people on the ferries for like Port Gamble. That place is tiny. It's a little speck, but it brings people over. And sometimes even to those programs, there's, thousands of people that head that way and they attend or they're in the theater. And Colville's the same way. It's a tiny town, but it also, theater has really helped it. So we want to keep the arts and cultures alive, and we want to be involved in those projects and developments, and we want our developers to help us on those too. So.
Super. One last? Mia Kay, thank you. Amy, thank you very much. With that, council, we're going to take a break for just a minute so that our finance department can get their slides set up. So we'll be right back. Thank you for joining us after our break. We'll go ahead and get started with agenda item number 4 is financial policy updates. Finance Department staff will be in attendance to present proposed changes to existing city financial policies. Individual chapters of the policy will be addressed at future council sessions. Gene?
Honorable Mayor, honorable council members, Gene Hill, Finance Department. Thank you for taking your time. And just to give you a heads up, you thought going through this stuff with Heather was bad.
Hey.
I'm gonna go home.
Just a quick agenda, and if I go too fast, just tell me to slow down. Want to quickly just address some of the current financial policies, financial policy overview, the importance of financial policies, the types of financial policies, and then Q&A, and then just kind of get some direction from you. So first off, if you look at the current policies, what's happened is, we've been in compliance. It's just the government regulation, as we haven't updated them since 2017. And so just in 22, there's like 3 different GASB requirements. Just, from going from fiscal year 21 to 22, it's helping us eat our lunch, if you will. Some of the changes that we'd like to do, obviously, is make sure that we're up to 2024 on the regulatory side, but also start to maybe address to where, we start looking at some of the policies where it would be more for a community of 60 to 100,000. Just, as we grow and just kind of promote that as we go along. So the importance of financial, or the overviews. Again, financial policies provide written guidance for financial decision-making and set strategic intent for financial management and our controls and strategic long-term approaches to financial management. Just some quick things are taxes, grants, donations. When you have turnover elected officials, it kind of sets that roadmap, if you will. Here's a kind of a clamshell, if you will, but you start out at the top. You got good financial management practices. We want to make sure that we have strategic intent and defined boundaries, best possible bond ratings. And as we've talked about economic development, things like that, bond rating and having those, both the social side for Moody's and S&P as well as the debt rating is very important. And then obviously you get down to best practices. Again, talking about the rating agencies. So you've got financial policies, long-term planning, and financial stability. That's what they're looking for, right? And then you have the social equity, which is looking for fair housing, green policies, community safety. Just different types of financial policies. Starting on the left-hand side, if you will, are your reserves, your debt management, investments, long-term capital approaches, or how we are doing our capital, maintenance, right? We talk about what have we done to, or what are we going to do to make sure that there's capital improvements, there's maintenance, that we're taking care of the city that way. Obviously, we need to make sure that the accounting and the audits are up to date and in compliance. Again, not saying that we're not in compliance. Good operating budgets, purchasing policies, our risk management, and then economic development. Does that make sense? Just to kind of give you an idea, looking at just starting with like reserve balances, you'll see a range of 10 to 20% of your operating, basically 3 months worth of expenditures are operating. You see some that are down at 10%, not good for the rating agencies. National average is 33%, just to kind of give you an idea where it's at. Again, it's put some aside for capital reserves, some for stabilization, and then a rainy day fund.
Gene, can I
Yes.
interrupt you there?
Yeah,
That National City Medium, does that have a population range? Is it larger in smaller cities or larger cities, or where does that
it's kind of
33.5?
it's on a per capita basis. So it would be based on the average of across all spectrums.
Of what?
So if you had a population of a city of 10,000, it would still be 33, right?
33% of what?
33% of your revenues or your expenditures.
Okay.
So your reserves.
So it doesn't matter what the size of the community is, they recommend the same financial policies.
Yeah, exactly. Because it's going to be relative to, if you're in New York, right, you got, I forget what it is, 10 million or whatever it is. They've got their issues that they've got to deal with, infrastructure. Here at Pocatello, we've got ours. And then if you go to a smaller city, they're still going to have, like Income, I don't know, they just spent $500,000 on sidewalks down there, for capital improvements.
Okay,
Does that answer your question?
yes.
Thank you, sir. Again, when should they be used? Kind of rainy day fund, budget stabilization, for those just unforeseen things. And then capitalization. We want to put it away for capital investments, capital structure, et cetera. Just kind of a recommendation, and I'd like to get your thoughts on it. Not in any particular order, but over the next 6 months, I'd like to start bringing these, one at a time, because they're pretty comprehensive when we go through them. And my thought is we ought to really start on the reserve balance, address that, because that kind of leads into the capital improvements, the investments. If you have a particular order that you'd like me to present them in, I'm fine doing that, but I thought this would work out pretty well. Good. That's the quick of it.
Questions, council? Yes.
What does GPOA stand for?
GPOA?
I think that's GFOA.
Yeah.
I think it's GFOA.
Government.
Oh,
Government
F. Okay.
Financial Office of Accounting.
Misread it. What's MRSC?
That is a private consulting firm out of Virginia. just some of their data that, I have to footnote where I got some of the data from.
Linda?
Can you go back to the recommendations? I think it's the last one. So you said you were thinking about, because this is pretty comprehensive,
Very.
that you would bring these to us over time.
Yes.
What kind of time frame are you
6 months,
thinking? 6 months,
maybe a year,
maybe a year?
depending on where we hit on the budget.
What are you, Jared now? It depends?
Yeah, it depends.
Or is it contingent?
Yeah, it's contingent. Okay.
And within that process, who do you see being involved in that process primarily? Is it you and your department? Are there other departments involved? Will our investment and audit committee be involved?
I think
any
definitely
of this?
the investment and audit committee will be involved in several of the policies. I think like with purchasing, that's going to involve everybody. As we start trying to get our head around that. Capital improvements, I think, takes on everybody. Because we need to put together, I would like to put together a 5-year capital plan, right? From a financial perspective, and have that a rolling, ongoing. And because it'll change. Hope that answers your question.
Yep. Just sort of trying to get an understanding of this process.
So every one of these will come up in front of you in a work session, so the entire council will have an opportunity to weigh in on it a little bit, probably. It would be what my vision would be. But it'd be pretty sound by the time it gets to the council, the departments and finance staff, and probably the audit committee will have had a look at it, and I wouldn't anticipate a lot of changes when the council takes a look at it. So, yes, Josh.
The one hesitation I have on that list is economic development coming last, because I worry that if we start with the small, we'll define and make so many kind of decisions or direction and lock in to the point that we get to economic development and it becomes a big picture that we talk about, but that we've already made all the decisions that are incompatible with our vision of economic development. I almost, and please, if you have a different sentiment, share it. But I almost wonder if we don't start with economic development so that when we make decisions around investment, around capital improvement, around payroll, that those decisions are done with the picture of economic development for Pocatello already in our minds that kind of guide it.
I don't have a issue with that. I think that we need to do the fund balance though first, the reserves,
Okay.
kind of get that defined so we know what we're working with.
Okay,
And then payroll is really important
okay,
because with the change that, again, some of the changes that were made in the handbook, we need to get payroll clarified and back out there. I have no problem if we were to stick it in at number 3 or number 4.
I think I'd prefer that. I don't know what the rest of the council's sentiment is, but
Keep from painting us in a corner.
I worry. Yeah, I worry if we make all the policy and small decisions first that development just becomes a nice platitude that we talk about.
Okay.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, super. Thank you. Gene, then we'll move to agenda item 5, so Gene's not going to move anywhere. Police retirement fund update. Finance department staff will be in attendance to present an update on police retirement fund and discuss future funding requirements.
You want me to reintroduce myself?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, all right. Gene Hill Finance Department. Again, thank you, Honorable Mayor, Honorable Council. So with the police retirement, I'd like to just kind of go over first, again, just investment priorities, just to make sure that we've covered that. Then go over the net liability obligation of the retirement fund, meaning what the city obligation is. Talk about the realized interest income that we got in fiscal year 23. Then talking about how I believe we can fund that net liability without a burden on the taxpayers at all. And then just want to go over the LGIP versus the 6-month T-bill, kind of where we've been doing. This is where we kept the city's money at for the most part. Just give you a quick update on that. And then that's really it. So first off, we want to make sure that principle is not lost, right? When we take money in, we want to make sure that it's safe and then it's liquid so that we can get it when we need it, and then it's yield. And it needs to be in that priority. If you get that out, you'll see what happened to Silicon Valley Bank is a perfect example. They were chasing yield clear out on the 30-year treasury bills. Rates start going up. They didn't have the liquidity. They didn't meet their capital reserve requirements, and they were out of business. So our job in the finance department is, again, safety, liquidity, yield. And if you have any questions about that, please let me know. But that's the guidance that I think we need to make sure that we're functioning under. If you look at the fair market value of the money that is right now in the police retirement fund, it's $2.6 million. Then if you look at again, it's an actuarial, so it's an estimate, right, of the average age of the people that are in retirement right now. It's 81, but that actuarial takes it out to where they're, and I hate to talk about life and death, but basically that, 4 to 5 years is their estimated age before they pass away. And that's, when you present value that back, that gives us, so the net liability is about 4.7 million, which leaves a shortfall of 2 million. Any questions? Yes, sir.
Do you know how many people are left on that?
16. That includes their spouses, that were
That's who were 16 separate people.
yes, 16 separate individuals. In 23, basically the realized interest, or in the actual interest we earned on the LGIP portfolio, or investment, if you will, was 3.2 million. The budget was only for 37 million. So that means that there's an overage of 3.2 million. So the idea being that we use of that 3.1, we use 2 million of it to fund the shortfall or the net liability of the police retirement. It still leaves 1.1 million that could go to the general reserves or the general fund. But I think that's a really good way to fund this, because it was, an unforeseen interest earned. Nobody could predict where interest rates were going to go up so fast. And so I think it's a nice windfall for us, if you will. Any questions? Yes, sir. Rick.
Do you feel this needs to be done in one chunk, Gene, or could we do a piece of the interest income this year and a piece next year and retain some of that interest for other purposes?
You could. My preference, just me personally, is I want to fix things as we go along, because we're in the accounting department, we've been finding so many things, just that we just try to fix stuff as we go, because we don't want to just kick it down the road and then we just want to take care of it as we go. But you could.
Linda?
And we had that discussion on the investment and audit committee, or is it audit and investment committee? But anyway, we did talk about that, and I think the general agreement or consensus on that committee was to use it to fix this issue now and not divide that up and use it for other things.
Brent?
Is this just a one-time issue, a one-time problem to fix?
The answer is, I think, yes, but again, as medical science continues to improve life, if they live longer than that 5 years, there's going to be another liability.
And what primarily drove the liability this time?
So what it is it's a defined benefit plan, right? And so from an accounting perspective, or a reporting requirement, you have to get an actuarial, you estimate the average life of that person, right? And then what that obligation is per year, and then you present value that back.
Right.
And that's what gives you your estimated liability. Right now, the current payout's about $700,000 per year. And then that's offset, by interest, the interest earned a little bit.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Rick?
There is a potential change there because as we increase pay to police officers, those retirees also receive that increase, where we don't know what it's going to be more than a couple of years down the road, then we don't know how that could be affected. So it's something that every couple of years needs to be reanalyzed to determine exactly what our future retirement obligation is going to be.
Okay.
So the recommendation is that we would take that, at the appropriate time when we do the amendment to the budget in '24, that we would take that interest earned income and use that to fund that short liability, or that net liability, excuse me, and then also to invest it out on that 18 to 24 month on the yield curve and what's called a ladder approach, not to get too technical, but basically what it does is we know what the obligation is going to be for the most part. We know it's going to come in, but we have an obligation of, say 50 to 60,000 per month. And so you just set it up so every month that money comes in, so we earn as much interest as we can, but we still have the safety, the liquidity, and then earn as much yield as we can.
So would you set only this interest transfer up and ladder only that, or would you do the principal balance remaining at this point also?
We flip it out, so the
All of it?
principal balance. So for example, it's about 200,000
Yeah.
that comes off. So again, you have 2 million that's set for 12 months. You'll basically divide it out equally over 12 months. So every month we move along, we take, 50, 60 grand out, and then we flip that on the backside. And then there's interest income so we try to add that into it. And so that way we can, if you look at the yield curve, right, it kind of peaks. Right now it's flattened out a lot, but on the front end is where you earn the most interest, but that can change. So you go out to a year and a half, and that kind of maximizes it. We can lock it in and just keep doing that so that we don't get out and have the interest rate risk that Silicon Valley had.
So are you anticipating monthly ladders, quarterly ladders? Where do you want to put this? Monthly?
Monthly, do it monthly. That way, because we have that obligation, so we're trying to match when the investment comes off, when it matures, match it with the obligation that we have, right? So that it just continually flows that way.
When you do the entire 4 point whatever it was, would be laddered? Or
yeah, it would
only
be
the
laddered.
interest segment?
No, it would be laddered so that, again, it would be 200,000 a month, right? Basically out for 2 years. And then it's.
Starting at a 12-month period or starting in 1 month increments?
We've already got 12 months, right? So this month, this 2 million that I'm asking for, we would take and we would put it on the backside. So starting with month 13 to month
okay.
24, you'd put 200 grand in. And then that way it constantly is, you average in, if you will, to earn as much as we can within the guidelines we have. So again, the idea would be that I would present this at the budget amendment in, I think, January. We'll get that teed up. Again, just moving on to just to kind of give you an idea of how the state LGIP has performed against the 6-month T-bill. And the reason I use the 6-month T-bill is because that's the average maturity or their duration. And this just kind of gives you an idea of what it looks like. Overall, the LGIP has outperformed the bill, but as you get where interest rates have risen, you can get a little bit more if you're in the bills. And this is just kind of an idea where we could potentially pick up some more interest without giving up the security and the liquidity, is if we were to maybe take 50% of this and put it into a Schwab account and buy into a Treasury mutual fund. It doesn't take any time to manage it, but there's almost 0.5% difference between the performance. And so it's something I'd like to explore, just to see if we can maybe, pick up another $500,000, $1 million for the city.
Rick?
What would the cost of that fund be through Schwab?
They're built in, it's a loaded fund. So
Front-end loaded?
yeah, so the cost is always already in it. It comes on the investment side. So we put $1 in, we get $1 out plus whatever interest.
Well, when I look at your yield curve here, your LGIP versus T-bills, and think about Schwab, I wonder if the real net yield after that fee will be as high as what's projected.
Don't know the answer because it moves.
Yeah.
But the LGIP, because they have, so a big fund, right, is 500 billion, $1 trillion, right? If you're talking about, a Vanguard, a Schwab, even UBS, Union Bank of Switzerland, right? Their assets that they manage is over $1 trillion. Those are big funds. The state is a small fund in terms. And so you don't have obviously the city doesn't have the purchasing power, if you will, that the state would have. But the state doesn't have the purchasing power that a Schwab or Vanguard or the federal government's gonna have. And so that's just taking advantage of it. That's, again, just want to explore it, report back to you if you're okay with that.
Good.
Sounds good. Yes, Josh.
I think we rightfully give departments credit when they look for revenue sources and are able to maximize revenue for the city. Gene deserves just as much credit as every other one for the work here, and because it's a high level of expertise, it is very technical, and I'm grateful that I'm not the one who has to sit there and do it. And I think Gene deserves a lot of credit for taking advantage and maximizing these interest dollars to help make taxpayer dollars go further.
Thank you. But again, I want to make sure that that credit also goes to the finance team.
Sounds great. Okay, yes, we are.
And you have verified with the state that we can invest outside of the LGIP?
Yes, as long as we stay within the treasuries, So again, as you know, our goal is to not go chase equities because it's too risky. It's not to go chase corporate bonds. Stay with the treasuries and make it simple, right?
Okay. Super. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move to agenda item 6, data analytics and predictive modeling presentation, fire department. Fire department staff will be in attendance to present information regarding Dark Horse emergency and data analytics and predictive modeling platform for emergency response.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Ryan Ahern, Fire Department. I've got a quick presentation we're pretty excited about and wanted to share this with you. I've kind of spoke about it briefly in some presentations previously. This is a company that will take some of our CAD data, our computer-aided dispatch data, and digest it into their analytics platform and give us access to that platform so that we can kind of do a deep dive to understand our call volumes, our response times, and all those metrics. And then they do something else that is pretty unique in the industry. They actually will project and do predictive modeling for the future. So as we are growing and we're looking at budget options for growth and how to address the public safety needs of our community, we can run scenarios in this system and say, well, where should we be looking to put our next station or evaluate existing stations? So I wanted to show you a quick video and let them kind of explain their platform. And also, I think it shows you how good they are with data visualization. So.
Hi, this is Daniel Hates. In this video, I'm just going to give a brief walkthrough of our 3 kind of flagship products. Dark Horse Diagnostics, which is tied to that diagnose part of the diagnose prescribe monitor. Next, I'll talk through a little bit on Dark Horse Deployment, which is the prescriptive part. And lastly, I'll briefly overview Dark Horse HQ, which allows you to monitor things on an ongoing basis. So Dark Horse Deployment has 3 dimensions. It's got space on the right here with a map. It's got time with this first chart, which is a timeline chart. And it's got categories, which are the other 2 charts, and the filters along the left. So anything I do on the timeline, say I scrolled through time, I looked back to a different time range, say March through March 2018, that's going to make changes in the map. That's going to make changes in these categorical charts. Any changes I make on the categorical chart, say I just wanted to look what Platoon C is doing, I filter out the other two, and I can see the calls that Platoon C responded to. In fact, I might even filter out the weekdays here on this bottom chart, and I can see what does Platoon C do on the weekends. Well, they responded to 625 events in that time. How many responses did they make? That's these tabs across the top. They made 1,100 and some vehicle runs. What was their performance on those weekend calls? About 43% of the time they got there in their first due target. How many of them did they not get to, and where? So now I'm seeing the 90 calls they didn't get to. And finally, what is the time intervals? What is the 90th percentile response time, turnout time, alarm handling time, etc. That's this last time intervals time. And I can see that about just under 14 minutes it takes them in total response time. Again, I could filter it down to just look at, let's see, the turnout and travel, or just the turnout component of that. Looks like about 2 minutes and 46 seconds is how long it took them to get out of their vehicle. All right, let's jump. So this is all historically looking back in time. Now we're going to look into the future. So this is our Dark Horse deployment tool. Again, same kind of mapping view, but now along the left I have different performance lenses through which to look at it. So I'm looking at the incident count. In 2019, there were 13,000 calls. Let's look into the future. Let's see, what would it be in 2030? So 12,300 calls. Today, what do we expect it to be in the future? Well, we expect growth up to about 14,000. And the forecast is like hex-specific forecast, something that kind of sets apart what we do as part of our package. And then I can also look at the drive times. I can also look at performance. I'm expected to be able to perform at about 54% first due response time in the next 30 years if I do nothing. And the real power of this tool is just being able to move around my stations and see, does that make an impact? To move around my units to see what kind of impact that makes. So within a station, so okay, that was a bad move. I lost about 6 minutes of drive time by making that move. But I can also, take that ambulance out of there and put it in a different station down here by adding it back to the system and seeing if that's a good move as well. So again, this is more of a what-if tool where we also do optimizations. Lastly, assuming I did that change, I would use the Dark Horse HQ product to see what kind of change did that make to my response performance, year over year. What has my response performance been in the last year? Well, I've lost 17%. So again, this is the monitoring part of the system. And we think of this as something that should be pushed down to a larger management team, not just used by an analyst. And it's that full, configuration. I can look at it by quarter. I can look at it by year. I can look at all the out-of-area calls that we responded to, all the urban calls. And then I can drill down and see the timeline. Oh my goodness, look at that decline in our first due performance. Back to the diagnostics. What am I going to do about it to improve it? So those three products form what I call that continuous improvement loop: diagnose, prescribe, and monitor. And each of those is kind of targeted on that different use case for your users. And that's it.
Dark Horse Emergency is the decision analytics platform.
Maybe. So I hope you forgive the video, but I thought that they could explain it and show you their platform and help you understand what we're trying to get to a little better than me just describing it. But we really want to have a way. We do have this data right now, and we do have some reports that we can run. Unfortunately, it's kind of the programs that we're using are fairly rudimentary, that they'll just kind of give us an average, or we can run it for a particular zone. But we don't really have the ability to drill down and understand the individual components for that. And I think it'll also help us provide you with better information as you're making decisions, whether it's budgetary or where to put resources to help educate you and visualize what's going on. And then I think Prescribe is going to be the one where they talked about the predictive modeling. And this is something that's fairly new in the fire service. There's some companies that have been doing it for a few years, and this company seems to have really refined it. And in reaching out to other agencies that are using this, I don't know if you noticed on the map, they were talking about South Salt Lake and Sandy area. Unified Fire Authority has used this, and they've used it to determine station placement and deployment models to really maximize what they're doing. And it has actually ended up saving they're a very large agency composed of a lot of different fire districts that put in together and have agreements. But it's really helped them save money by optimizing station placement and deployment in the system. And then we just hope to really push this down to our people and kind of help create an evidence-based culture to really ensure that we're meeting the needs of the community. Some of the logistics on this program, it is a $50,000 initial data digest, and this is them taking it's a 10-week process. They take about 5 years of our call data. They cleanse it, put it into their system, and then we would have access to it at that point. And then moving forward, it's $20,000 a year to continue to feed that system, to continue to look at real time what's going on in the system now. And we do have real time information for this. It's updated daily. We would propose, I'm also, Commissioner Huff is actually talking to the commission this morning about this, and then I'm going before them next Tuesday to ask for their partnership in this. They have a very deep need for this as they look to expand EMS, hopefully between South County and North. And so I think this opens up a lot of opportunities for them. But we would like to kind of get started on this as soon as possible so that we can start understanding some of these issues and have you better information in the winter and before the FY25 budget bill. These are some of the areas that have used it. As I mentioned, Unified
Chief?
Fire. Yes.
Chief, real quick. Oh, sure. Sorry.
I'm happy to stop. Unified Fire Authority is probably the closest one to us. I've talked to their chief, and I kind of alluded that they've used it to really make they had actually already purchased land to put stations, and they had figured that they needed 3 new stations, and then they engaged in this process. And they said, well, really, if you did it here, and it really helped them visualize, they sold some of the property, made some money, made a different decision, and it actually improved service for less money. Central Pierce is over in the I-5 corridor, southeast of Tacoma. They had similar experience, and then Spokane City Fire on here as well. These are pretty large agencies. But on the Dark Horse website, there are some case studies of some smaller jurisdictions similar to our size that have used it to make decisions as well. So it's not as if this is just for a large agency that's got 18 or more stations. This can also be used for jurisdictions of our size. So I'd be happy to.
Okay, questions. Brent?
So presumably this company will provide all the analytics. Do they also provide the analysis and recommendations to work with you to determine how best to utilize this data, like on placement, or do they just give you the software and then you figure out how to implement it?
No, they assign you with an analyst that will help you interpret the data and ask questions, and maybe they present you with something and you go in and you say, well, help us understand if this, and they even shared with us on one of the previous calls that their analysts do this so much that they sometimes will provide injects and say, well, you could consider doing this and this may solve your problem. Obviously, they don't make the decision for you.
Right.
We're just hoping to use them to inform the decisions that will be before us.
But could you give them, say, some what-if scenarios and they could give you the impact on those?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
Josh?
You mentioned that we have a rudimentary program that does, the basic version of this. What's the cost of that program?
That program is free right now.
It's free. Okay. Do you have an estimated percentage of shared funding between the city and county?
I'm asking for 50-50 share.
Okay. And then do you anticipate that you would be able to, or what, I guess, let me ask a better question. What percentage, if any, do you believe that you could absorb in your current budget for this program? Or are you asking exclusively for new funds?
So what we would ask for on this is we had some fund balance at the end of FY23, both on the county side and on the city side, and that's what I'm asking them for permission to use that. And I would be coming to you with a contract and permission to use Fund 78 for the initial FY24, which is what we're in now, implementation fee,
Yep.
and the first year's subscription fee. And then we would build it into our FY25 budget. We are going to change around some things with some of our software packages moving forward. There's some programs that we're on that we're not very happy with. We're looking for better options that hopefully will be less expensive as well. And so while I can't assure you that we'll be able to absorb it in the budget, we certainly are conscientious about the implications of this cost.
Appreciate that. One less.
Okay.
Your slide said 10-week implementation program.
Correct.
So you'd anticipate hear back from the county 4 to 6 weeks for council, assuming implementation. Are we thinking what, like rollout ready to, like we'll be using it by April?
Actually, so I'm going to the county to ask for their funding, and I'm prepared to bring this to the council next Thursday if you should choose that this is something you're interested in.
Okay.
And then we would hopefully execute that immediately and begin digesting the data. And so by the first of the year, I would hope, or shortly thereafter, that we would start having information.
Okay, I've got Linda and then Scott and then Brent.
And my question is kind of similar to Josh's. I'm Councilmember Mansfield, sorry. Can you just go back one slide about that 10-week implementation? So the last part of that is in place prior to the 25 budget build. So we're going to start building that in the spring next year. So we're putting the money in that budget for 25. Is that correct? We're not paying anything before that, or we
So
are?
we would have a payment due here in a few weeks when we
Okay.
execute the contract.
Because that's what I was trying to get clear on. So we're saying we're going to be up and running pretty quickly, but then we're going to put this into the budget build. So that would be for the ongoing
Correct.
expenses.
Yeah, the
but-
annual subscription, the initial contract with them is for a 5-year agreement. There is an exit clause, an execution clause that our legal department was, I think, satisfied with. So it doesn't require us to continue for 5 years, but it is a $20,000 a year, $10,000 for each agency as we move forward to continue to analyze our data and have it update the system for the predictive modeling.
So when's the 50,000 due?
It would be due here in the next few weeks
In the
if we
next few
execute the
weeks?
contract.
Okay. If that gets approved, and we would be 25,000,
Correct.
and that's already in your budget?
It would be in Fund 78
Fund 78, okay. Thanks.
is what we would request.
Right.
But we obviously need to.
We would approve that. Or not.
So I guess my question is going to go back to funding, and we've had this talk, and I feel bad for you. I've already told you that, right? But I'm not, I look at this 50-50 thing, doesn't cut it. 75, 80% of the calls that we're going to analyze are the ambulance, which is run by the county. Maybe 25% is fire. I believe in this. I think it's smart, but I also look at it and say the county is going to benefit. You're going to benefit from it, but you're running it for them. Right now, they're in this fire district looking at changing things and those things. Do we, as a city, fund half of that? I just, when I look at it, it doesn't seem fair to me. And I'm only saying that because I have looked at everything else that's gone on here, right? We're out of a contract, we're out of all that. I just don't see us doing the 50-50 thing. That doesn't mean that the council would not say, yes, do that, but we're carrying the county on this again, I guess. And I look at it and I'm opposed to that to a point. If they want to come in and say, you pay 20% or 25 and we pay 75, that to me makes more sense at this point, knowing what we're looking at. I like this. I mean, I know why you're doing it. I don't know that the city should be funding 50% of it. I guess that's where I want to get on this. And several other things for that matter, but that's not what we're talking about. So when I look at this, I would be opposed to the 50-50 implementation on it. I agree with what you're trying to do. I just think we're carrying a part of it, so.
Brent?
To follow up, have you explored the county paying a higher percentage?
I have not.
What are your thoughts on that?
First of all, I understand that perspective. I guess to maybe address that, my thinking on this is that this is a platform that it doesn't really, there's not a cost associated with, okay, how many times do you access the data? It's kind of a platform that they say, okay, we're gonna throw all of that in. And yes, a lot of it is EMS, but a lot of it is response to EMS in the city of Pocatello. And the fire department does provide quick response with an engine for certain acuity calls. And so I think even though it's technically an EMS call, it does impact the department. And so being able to do that root cause analysis and really drill down and say, well, do we need to send a fire truck to all these calls? Or could we try a different deployment model instead of sending a fire truck to these and explore some of those scenarios is where I think the value comes. And I think one method could be the pro rata. Hey, we're gonna just take the percentage of calls and we're gonna split it that way. That certainly is a method to do it. I am kind of more in my mind, it's more of just the partnership of, hey, we both benefit, let's share it, let's split the check and do it. But I certainly understand the other perspectives as well.
Well, I have the other perspective because of other things, right? So it continues to build. And that's why, like I said, I believe in the program. I understand what you're doing and why you're doing it, lived it, watched it. This is, from what I've seen in the past and dealt with, this is a better way to do it, right? But again, my whole thing has been, how long do we carry people and when do we finally stop and put our foot down and say, let's be fair? And we talked about it earlier with Bannock development, right? How much can you do? We're a big little city and we've been taking care of the people around us. But at a certain point, I think the taxpayers are gonna look and say, people out in the county are getting a much better deal than we are for what we fund within the city. So it just, that's my view, I guess.
Yeah. Did you have a follow-up on your question? Okay, Rick?
Is this a cloud-based system?
I'm sorry.
Is this a cloud-based software system?
I'm sure with the amount of data, it probably is. I know that we have local access and we can run these scenarios ourselves. We will have dashboards here. But I have to be honest, I don't know where the data is stored.
My concern is if in 3 or 4 years we decide not to do this anymore, do we lose all the data when they sever that cloud connection?
No, it's still our data, and we have it today, and they would upload it from our servers
analysis
here.
we would lose then.
Yeah. What we would just lose is the access to their analytics. We would have maybe some of the historical and some of the reports that we had printed, but we would lose the ability to continue to look at their analytics on their platform. Their kind of packaging of the data for us.
Okay.
Any other questions, council?
Is this something you'd like me to bring, to pursue and bring back before you?
Yes, contingent on the county funding.
Yeah, and
If the county says no, I would like it to come back in another work session, or whether we do a special work session or just the next month's work session, I'd like to see it again before we make any decisions.
I will say that this, the current contract and the current plan that we have in place is absolutely contingent on a shared funding model. Because if the funding on the other side isn't there, then we have to do a different contract and analyze how we want to do it from there. But this only works, and it will only come back to you if it's in a shared funding model.
Okay.
So when is your meeting with the county?
Tuesday.
Of next week?
Yeah.
Can you,
So-
sorry.
Go ahead.
I'd just like to ask if we could just get an email or some sort of a notification about how that meeting goes.
Absolutely.
So by next Tuesday, our agenda will be out, and so you'll see it on the agenda.
Okay?
It will be being polled if the county doesn't do anything with it, and so.
Okay.
I'm sure we can throw out an email, but at the end of the day, it will be on the agenda. We'll have to pull it if they don't do anything with it, so.
But could we continue an agenda item to tell us what the county's attitude towards increased shared funding is going to be?
How deep in the weeds are you going to get with the county on their philosophy on shared funding with this?
I'm sure I can get as deep as we care to. Right now, the request for their agenda is for the 35,000, which is the same thing that I would be asking for next week from the council.
You said you have that money, though, that we did not use last year, in last year's budget, set aside for both county and city.
Correct. Right now, it's one contract. We didn't separate it out for a county signature and a city signature. We're running it through here. So the contract will be before you for approval and the permission to expend. What I'm going on Tuesday for them is the financial component of that for them to contribute to this platform.
Go ahead. I don't know if I understand what you're looking for.
So the meeting you're going to do on Tuesday is not about the general contract for ambulance service between
No.
the county and the city?
No.
Is that on the agenda sometime down the road, or?
Yes, we're continuing to work on that.
Okay.
That was the first thing I talked to him about this morning at breakfast.
He's in a bad spot.
They're not he is in a bad spot.
He's in a bad spot. He has to deal with us and he has to deal with them.
Yeah.
And it certainly makes it tough. And you getting pushed hard from one side and drug away on the other. And I thank you for what you do, because I couldn't have done it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you for joining us today. With that, we are adjourned.